30 pieces of blood. Tommy Steele's fist came down hard on the rickety table, the sharp crack echoing like a gunshot through the bunker's hollow confines. The maps and papers scattered like dead leaves, fluttering to the cold, dirt-packed floor.
"Keep your damn voices down,"
he hissed, his green eyes, so much like his mother's, sweeping across the grim faces of his fellow rebel leaders. Shadows swallowed the edges of the room, clinging to the stone walls like hungry phantoms. The faint clink of weapons being cleaned echoed like the toll of funeral bells in the oppressive quiet. They were buried deep in the guts of the Blue Ridge Mountains, where the scent of damp earth mixed with dread and desperation. But despite the illusion of safety carved into the mountain's flesh, everyone in the room could feel the noose tightening, an invisible grip closing around their throats, a stone tomb masquerading as a refuge. Danny stood beside his brother, his jaw clenched so tight it could have cracked bone. His sharp blue eyes scanned the group, watching, weighing. The tension in the room was a living thing, thick and suffocating, seeping into their lungs with each shallow breath. Fear wasn't just a feeling here. It was a parasite feeding on the rebel leaders' collective uncertainty. The air was heavy with it, and they knew from experience that fear could breed betrayal. Fear of the enemy or fear of each other.
"Something's wrong,"
Danny murmured, his voice barely louder than the drip of condensation down the stone walls. But in that silence, his words hit like a thunderclap.
"Our last 3 raids, ambushed. We lost a dozen fighters."
His fingers curled into fists. The skin over his knuckles stretched tight.
"It's like they knew we were coming."
The murmurs that followed were laced with dread. Eyes darted from shadow to shadow, looking for an enemy that wore the face of a friend. Tommy's gaze sharpened as he studied their expressions, one by one, searching for the Judas in their midst.
"Which means,"
Tommy said, his voice a blade slicing through the tension,
"we have a traitor."
The single bulb hanging overhead flickered, its dying light casting jagged shadows that twisted like writhing serpents along the cracked stone walls.
"It's impossible to know that for sure,"
Eli blurted out, too quickly, too loudly. His voice cracked, the tremor betraying him. He shrank back, his body pressing against the cold, unforgiving wall as if he could disappear into the cracks that spider-webbed through the ancient stone.
"Is it?"
Tommy's tone was colder than the grave, his piercing stare pinning Eli like an insect on a needle.
"Because unless you've got another explanation, I'd say it's the only thing that makes sense."
Silence fell, thick and suffocating. The weight of suspicion settled on them all, pressing down like the earth above their heads. Danny's voice, rough with barely restrained fury, shattered the stillness.
"Brothers and sisters,"
He said, his tone carrying both authority and desperation.
"we're fighting for our survival, our freedom. We can't let suspicion tear us apart."
"Then what do you suggest we do?"
A woman asked, her voice laced with a strain of sleepless nights and relentless fear.
"Trust is a luxury we can't afford anymore."
Tommy said grimly.
"From now on, the leadership keeps mission plans locked down until the last possible moment. No loose ends, no unnecessary risks, and we watch, closely, the traitor will slip up.
His jaw clenched as his gaze swept over them.
They always do.
The group dispersed, but the silence that followed wasn't relief. It was a funeral march. As the rebels returned to their duties, their movements were jerky, eyes flickering constantly to the shadows. The paranoia thickened, twisting the air tighter around them like a noose. The tunnels felt more like a cage with every step they took. Tommy and Danny retreated to the strategy chamber where the weight of their responsibilities pressed down like a tombstone. The walls, lined with maps streaked by veins of red string, bore the bleeding lifeblood of the rebellion. Arteries choked with the constant thread of betrayal. Tommy leaned over the table, his fingers tracing potential escape routes across the worn map, but even his steady hand betrayed him now. A slight tremor echoed through his fingertips, a crack in the unyielding facade he had worn since childhood.
We need a plan,
He murmured, his voice barely louder than the groan of the ancient timbers that framed the bunker's fragile sanctuary.
We'll find the rat.
Danny said, but the weight in his tone made the promise feel hollow. Exhaustion had dulled his usual fire, replacing it with the weariness of a soldier who had seen too much and lost too many. His voice was strained, cracked at the edges like the brittle walls that confined them.
And when we do,
let's just keep everyone alive until then.
Tommy cut him off, his words landing like a death knell, grim and hollow. It was a tall order. They both knew it. The cost of betrayal had already been measured in blood and sacrifice. As they stood there, shoulder to shoulder, the oppressive silence settled around them like a shroud. The weight of their world, of the rebellion teetering on the edge of collapse, pressed down harder than the stone above their heads. It was suffocating. The rebellion was not just a fight. It was a living thing, fed by sacrifice and starved by betrayal. And now, that lifeblood was running thin, too thin. They didn't speak of it, but both felt the rot of uncertainty clawing at the foundation of their resolve. How had their mother carried this weight for so long? Sage Steel, the Wraith, had not only raised them in the ashes of a fallen world, but forged them into weapons of the rebellion while leading the resistance against the Crimson Empire. She had molded them from the bones of a shattered nation, giving them steel in their spines and fire in their veins. And yet, she had borne that burden alone. For 10 years, a decade. Tommy could still hear her voice from those early days, soft but unyielding, whispering survival strategies as she stitched up his wounds. He could still feel the fierce grip of her hand on his shoulder the first time he held a gun, steadying him when the weight felt too heavy. And now she was gone. The thought of their mother, bound and broken in Pilatus's grasp, was a wound neither of them could bear to touch. The possibility of her permanent loss loomed over them, a specter of pain too immense to acknowledge out loud. Even between them, they didn't speak her name, not when the ache was this raw. But the ghost of her sacrifice lingered in the silence, a heavy presence that wrapped around their hearts and refused to let go. They stood side by side, two sons of Sage Steel, two sons of the Wraith, burdened with a legacy they could feel cracking beneath their feet. A legacy that was bleeding out. And in that terrible, suffocating silence, both brothers mutely acknowledged the same cold, terrifying truth. If they didn't uncover the traitor soon, the rebellion would die, strangled in the dark before it ever saw the light. An attentive student of his mother's, Danny excelled at navigating the dark net. The hum of the computers in the Rebel Communications Center was a constant companion to his vigilance. But tonight, it felt like a heavy mask over the grim task at hand. Danny's fingers danced across the keyboard, his eyes narrowed in fierce concentration as encrypted messages flickered across the screen. The ghostly glow of the monitors illuminated his face, casting shadows that stretched long and thin across the concrete walls of the Rebel Communications Center. He was a natural at this, a skill honed from long nights spent under Sage's tutelage, learning how to navigate the information pathways of the darknet. It was one of the few things that he was better than his older brother at. But tonight, the familiar rhythm of his fingers felt heavy, deliberate, as if the air itself was too thick to breathe, let alone move in. Beside him, Tommy stood silent, a statue of cold resolve. His green eyes reflected the shifting light of the screens, but the emotion behind them was unreadable. His fists clenched at his sides, and the only sign a storm brewed barely contained beneath a thin veneer of control.
Got something,
Danny murmured, the words barely audible over the low hum of the machines. Tension sharpened his voice as an anomalous string of data caught his eye, a thread out of place in the tapestry of encrypted messages sent by the hacktivists.
Show me,
Tommy said, his tone so low it barely carried past the thrum of the hardware. Danny clicked through the activity logs, his pulse quickening with each movement. The silence in the room wrapped around them like a noose. Then the video appeared, a grainy black and white feed from one of their newer hidden perimeter cameras that only they and their darknet friends knew about. A figure moved through the trees.
Come on,
Danny muttered, zooming in, his eyes narrowing. The figure emerged from the shadows, and both brothers leaned in as the screen revealed a familiar face. Eli, the man they had known for years, a man they trusted, the same man who had stood beside them through blood and fire, who had sworn loyalty to the rebellion and to their mother. But there he was, standing in the woods under the cover of darkness, taking a package from a figure that did not belong in this world. The video feed shifted to another angle, and the brothers' worst fears were confirmed. A vampire. The creature stood just outside the range of the floodlights, but its presence was unmistakable on camera, a place they couldn't hide their true nature. Its fangs glinted, and its eyes glowed red with unnatural hunger. The sight of it, so close to their northern base, sent a chill rippling down their spines.
Jesus Christ,
Tommy whispered, his voice tight. A sick feeling twisted in Danny's gut.
damn it, Eli.
Tommy's jaw clenched, his cheek twitching. His knuckles whitened as his fists curled tighter.
we confront him.
Danny growled low, his usual composure cracking under the weight of rage as the heat of betrayal scorched through his veins.
Now.
They found Eli in a secluded part of the base, working on the air filtration system, where the mountain's chill seeped through the walls like the air in an underground crypt. Heavy with damp, the scent of earth and stone wrapped around them like a shroud. The dim glow of a single lantern flickered, casting jagged shadows across the tunnel's walls as they approached. Eli looked up, his face bathed in half-light.
Tommy, Danny,
His voice cracked, brittle and thin.
how's it going? What's up?
The words hung in the air like a desperate prayer, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. His eyes wouldn't meet theirs.
Cut the crap, Eli.
Danny snapped, his voice edged with cold fury.
We know.
Eli's eyes flicked between them, his posture defensive yet crumbling by the second.
Know what?
His attempt at feigned ignorance was pathetic and limp, a dead thing that didn't even twitch. Tommy stepped forward, the weight of judgment in his eyes. He raised his phone, the video playing in muted silence. The grainy footage cast a damning glow onto Eli's face, every flicker of light exposing the truth.
We saw you.
Tommy said, his voice as cold as a grave.
With one of them.
Why?
Danny demanded. Eli's shoulders slumped, his head bowed as if the weight of his sins had finally broken him. The light from the phone cast jagged shadows across his features, making him look hollow, already a dead man.
I had no choice.
His voice barely carried over the stillness that followed.
Choices always exist, Eli.
Tommy replied, his tone like winter steel, cold, sharp, and merciless. Eli's gaze lifted, desperation bleeding into his eyes.
They threaten my family.
He choked out, tears brimming and spilling down his face.
Please. They said they'd take them, turn them. My daughter's sick. They are the only ones who have the medicine. I didn't know what else to do.
The silence that followed was absolute. Tommy's expression remained unreadable, but Danny's blue eyes darkened with something dangerous.
You think that makes a difference? They threaten everyone's family. They took our mother and we didn't turn traitor to get her back. Your action have put the whole rebellion at risk.
Danny said softly, his voice a low growl that barely restrained the murderous fury beneath.
How many have we lost because of you?
Too many.
Tommy murmured, his gaze distant, as if counting the names etched into his soul. Eli crumpled to his knees, the weight of his betrayal crashing down upon him. The ragged sobs that shook his body were the sounds of a man who knew there was no forgiveness left to give.
I'm so sorry.
He whispered. But sorry could not resurrect the dead.
No.
Tommy's voice was quiet, deadly quiet.
But you will be.
For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then, like a wild animal sensing death, Eli bolted. His body surged forward in a desperate bid for escape, a last-ditch effort to outrun the inevitable.
Don't.
Tommy growled, but it was too late. Eli sprinted through the tunnels like a man possessed, his footsteps echoing like a death knell against the stone walls. But no one outran judgment. A sharp crack echoed through the tunnels. followed by the dull thud of Eli's body hitting the cold ground. The rifle butt had connected with brutal efficiency. Tommy and Danny emerged from the tunnel like reapers stepping from the shadows, their eyes trained on the crumpled figure at their feet. A thin runnel of blood oozed from the back of Eli's head, trailing along the cracked stone, seeping into the earth like a sacrificial offering.
Thanks, Cherry.
Danny muttered, his voice devoid of warmth as he glanced at the woman standing over Eli, her rifle still in her hands.
Anytime, Steele.
Cherry smirked, but there was no humor in it, only a predator's satisfaction.
Let's get this fucking traitor where he belongs.
They dragged Eli through the dim corridors, his limp body a weight of betrayal that scraped against the stone floor. His ragged breaths echoed around them, mixing with the distant hum of activity from the rebel base. The rebels who saw them pass turned away, their eyes filled with silent accusations and barely concealed hatred. None spoke. They all knew. Their Judas had been found, and there was no redemption left to offer. The chamber where they threw Eli was a cold void of stone and darkness. The air hung thick, as if the walls themselves remembered every drop of blood spilled here. Only a single metal chair occupied the center, its frame bolted to the ground, arms and legs fitted with heavy cuffs stained with rust and bloody memories. Eli hit the floor with a grunt, his body curling inward like a dying insect, gasping for breath. The faint, coppery scent of his own blood filled his nostrils, mingling with the stench of fear and regret.
On the chair.
Tommy's voice was devoid of mercy. Cherry yanked Eli up by the collar, her grip unrelenting as she forced him into the seat. The cuffs clamped down with a chilling finality, the echo of metal on metal reverberating through the chamber like the tolling of a bell. Tommy and Danny stood before him, their faces carved from stone. The sons of sage steel, soldiers shaped by war, betrayal, and loss. But beneath the steel of their exterior, something darker stirred. A hunger for answers. A thirst for justice that burned hotter than phosphate.
Tell us everything,
Tommy said, his tone calm, but calm like the stillness before a tornado. He circled the chair slowly, his footsteps reverberating off the walls, echoing like a countdown. Eli's head lolled forward, his breaths shallow and uneven.
Please.
He rasped, his voice barely above a whisper.
My family. I had no choice.
Tommy's fist shot out like a snake striking. His knuckles connected with Eli's jaw, sending a spray of blood and spit across the whitewashed wall.
You know how this works, Eli. Tell us everything.
Tommy demanded, his voice resonating through the room.
Or your family will join you in paying the price.
Cherry, standing behind Eli, wrenched his head back by the hair so his bloodied face was tilted toward the brothers. Eli's wide eyes, filled with terror and exhaustion, darted between the brothers. His lips quivered as he swallowed back the bitter taste of inevitability. He knew there was no escape. The truth would come out, one way or another. And he knew the brothers wouldn't touch his family unless he gave them reason to. They were honorable that way, like their mother, a woman he had known since before the fangers revealed themselves. They would not lay his sins on his wife and children. unless he lied. Tommy and Danny stood over him, their faces grim masks of determination. With each passing second, the air felt heavier. The weight of his betrayal crushed his soul.
They came to me.
Eli stammered, his voice cracking.
When I was in town, getting supplies. I didn't go to them.
Tommy's jaw clenched, but he said nothing.
They knew about my daughter's illness.
Eli whispered, his voice thick with desperation.
They promised medicine, safety, said they'd keep her alive if I cooperated.
His gaze dropped to the floor, as if the weight of his words crushed him.
They threatened to turn them.
He choked, his body trembling like a man standing on the edge of an abyss.
My wife, my little ones.
Promises from vampires are poison.
Danny interrupted, his fists clenching at his sides.
And you fucking drank it.
Eli's tears spilled over, streaking down his bloodied face.
They made good on their promises. They didn't touch them. Got my daughter the medicine. Besides, I had no choice.
He sobbed, the words barely audible.
Choices always exist, Eli.
Tommy murmured, his voice dripping with cold finality.
You chose wrong.
So, your family survived while others died? You could have come to us. Told us they approached you. You could have fought back. Die with honor. Not betray your own kind. Not cower and serve those monsters who have killed so many of us.
Danny spat out, his blue eyes blazing with a deadly fury that belied his youth.
Enough, Danny.
Tommy interceded, though his own heart raced with a cocktail of contempt and sorrow. He kneeled down, bringing his face level with Eli's.
We need details, Eli. Routes, numbers, plans. Anything you gave them. What did you tell them?
Everything.
Eli's voice cracked, and he swallowed hard.
Patrol routes, supply caches, attack strategies. I passed it all along. They have known every move before we make it for months. But I didn't give them the headquarters or anything near D.C.
He told them hopefully, as if it would make a difference to what happened to him in the end. The grim reality of Eli's confession settled over the room and outer hallway like a deathly silence. The vampires' reach extended further than they had feared, their tactics more insidious. Every operation, every life lost, it all bore the stain of this treachery.
Your cowardice has cost us dearly,
Danny said, his gaze fixed on Eli, and betrayal squeezed his chest. His brother's eyes mirrored the regret in his own, both burdened by the realization that their rebellion was filled with vulnerabilities, and this could cause the death of many others.
Did they say what they're planning? Anything about their next move?
Tommy pressed, each word sharpened by urgency. Eli hesitated, then nodded pathetically.
An assault on the northern front. They're massing forces larger than we've ever seen.
Tommy and Danny exchanged a look. The revelation was a double-edged sword, actionable intelligence. But at what cost?
Is there more?
Danny demanded, a vein throbbing in his temple. Tommy held up a hand, silencing his brother before he could explode. He turned back to Eli, his gaze piercing into his soul.
Your family will not suffer for your mistakes,
Tommy promised, his voice a low growl.
but you must give us something more we can use. Something that will prevent more needless human death.
Danny paced behind Tommy like a caged lion, trying to dispel some of his fury. Eli cringed, a fresh wave of guilt washing over his features. His eyes, rimmed red with fear and fatigue, lifted to meet Tommy's.
My contact mentioned.
His voice broke, the words tumbling out in a rush of desperation.
The location, where they're holding Sage.
Danny's world stopped.
Our mother?
The words barely escaped his lips, but the fury behind them made the air vibrate.
How long have you known that?
He snarled, and his brother gripped him hard around the chest, grounding him before he exploded.
Where?
Tommy's voice was ice, but his eyes burned with something primal.
An underground cell, beneath the cathedral.
Eli confessed, his gaze dropping to the cold floor like a sinner before the judgment seat.
They've kept her in a cell in the cathedral's basement. She's either there or in Pilatus's throne room. They never allow her outside. She's alive, but...
Go on.
Tommy urged, his voice barely above a whisper.
They use her to write their history books.
Eli choked out.
And when she's finished, they plan to execute her for all to see. She's going to be their bait.
Silence filled the chamber. A terrible silence. Tommy held his brother in place, his body trembling with barely contained rage. The weight of their mother's fate hung heavy in the air, suffocating them both. Danny's jaw clenched, his hands flexing at his sides, as if itching to rend the world apart.
We need a plan.
Tommy murmured, but the promise in his voice was lethal. Tommy exchanged a look with Danny, their bond as brothers, as soldiers, born from rebellion, stronger than steel. They stepped out of the chamber into the dim torchlight of the tunnels, where the whispers of the rebellion stirred like the rustling of dead leaves.
Tommy!
Danny cautioned, his voice barely above a whisper, but the warning in it was clear.
This could be a trap.
Their mother, the very heart of their rebellion, was within reach, yet their enemy still had her, gripped in their talons, an enemy that they and the others had already retreated from once on their mother's orders. Tommy's jaw clenched, but he didn't hesitate.
I know.
He replied,
But it's Mom.
This story is still unfolding, so subscribe and follow the pulse of the night. New chapters rise soon, and those who are bound to this channel will hear them the moment